All right, guys, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to episode 5 of the PlayStation podcast, weekly podcast where we talk about PlayStation and, of course, the gaming industry. And it's good to be back. So hopefully you guys can hear me and the picture's coming through okay and the sound's coming through okay. Let me know if there's any problems. I have had issues with the PC crashing 3 or 4 times actually this week. So if it does crash, I will be back. Just give me a few minutes. So we've got some gameplay being shown in the background. That was some Battlefield footage from earlier this week. So let me know if you've been dabbling with Battlefield. So it's good to be back, guys. It's really good to be back on the podcast. I actually really did miss this. So let me just run through briefly what the podcast will consist of today before we go into more detail. So we'll start with some basic housekeeping like we always do, and ways in which the channel can be supported, and some shout outs to channel members. We'll move on to what games we're currently playing right now. And then it's the main talking point of the last week. We'll work our way through the topics and the main discussion points of the podcast. Then we'll take a look at the recent channel polls and some of your comments, typically over the last week or so, and move on to a new segment towards the back end of the podcast called Unscripted. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about Unscripted later on in the podcast. So brief overview of what we're talking about today. And what we'll do is we'll move into some housekeeping and just allow a few more people to file into the podcast. What we'll do is have a quick look at the so housekeeping, as I said. So housekeeping, shout out to the God of War and the Uncharted channel members. These channel members go above and beyond supporting the channel directly with their channel memberships. Thank you guys so much for being part of the channel here and part of the community. How you doing, Raz? Yeah, it's good to be back. You're watching the NFL, the Eagles. Awesome. There's hey Petrov, how you doing, buddy? There's also some NFL happening in London this weekend. I'm not obviously a huge fan of the NFL. It's something new to me. But yeah, NFL going around the world is quite interesting. But yeah, there's some games happening at Wembley Stadium this weekend, apparently. I don't know who's playing. I haven't got a clue. So maybe you guys can enlighten me. So shout out to the God of War and Uncharted channel members. You guys go above and beyond. But you can see the channel members' names across the bottom of the screen. But I want to say also a big shout out to the regular people who turn up day in, day out on the channel. Tox, how you doing, brother? You made it. Well done, Tox. So regular people who turn up, regular viewers, actually not viewers, the community, you guys turn up day in, day out, and you watch the channel, you support the channel, you support the streams, you turn up, you show your amazing support, and you're actively engaged on the channel. So you help the community grow here on YouTube. Thank you guys for your support. So how can you guys support the channel? Well, there's lots of things that can happen to support the channel. First of all, you guys being here, taking part on the podcast, on the live stream, that is the number one thing. Whether it's live, whether you're here after the event, because I know not everyone can turn up work and other responsibilities. I appreciate it. Sometimes it's not right in terms of timing. And I know a lot of people actually listen to the podcast the day after or during the week when they go out for walks and stuff like that. So you guys taking part, contributing by just being here, watching, and that really helps out. That's the number one thing that supports the channel. You guys just watching the content, the videos, the live streams, engaging with the posts, leaving comments. That is the number one thing that you guys can do that helps the channel. And other ways you can help the channel is leave a like. I don't say it enough, and I probably I forget saying leave a like. You know, it's just one of them things. But if you hit that like button, that would be very much appreciated. It tells me you're enjoying the weekly podcast, weekly videos, and so on. And it also tells YouTube that the community is enjoying the content on the channel. So, guys, go ahead and hit that like button. How you doing, JJ? Hope you're doing well, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Other ways you can help support the channel. If it's within your means, consider becoming a channel member to support the channel directly. We have 2 tiers, God of War level and Uncharted level. Becoming a channel member helps and supports the channel directly. Now, if you're not a channel subscriber, you can become a channel subscriber. Of course, that's free. But here's a funny stat, right? 90%, right? 90% of viewers who view the channel content regularly, these are regular people turn in. Sometimes I'll leave a comment. You watch the content on a regular basis and you're not channel members. That's 90% of people. So if you have a moment, if you've got a couple of minutes, just hit that subscribe button, become a channel member, become a channel subscriber, and never miss any videos, posts, or podcasts on the channel. And other ways you can support the channel. If you want to get something off your chest, if you have an issue, if you want to say something controversial, you want to make a statement, you want to debate something, put forward a super chat and let's discuss it. And I think those are the best ways to really help and support the channel. But overall, the number one thing you can do is just be here on the podcast, be there on the videos, engage with the content, hit the like button, become channel subscribers. Okay, that's the very least, do that and the channel is sorted, guys. So that's the housekeeping done and dusted. Raz, you said the NFL is definitely more of a US thing, but they are actively trying to spread it globally. Our football is different than yours. Yeah. Well, apparently they're looking to take the football, as you Americans call it, soccer, right? But it's really football because we play with the ball and with our feet. So football, they're trying to take European football globally. And apparently there's some games in Spain and Italy that are going over to, I don't know, like Australia and the Middle East and stuff like that. So really controversial over here in the UK and Europe about these topics. So what are you guys, do I need to ask really? Should I ask? What are you guys playing right now? Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you're watching this after the event. What are you playing right now? For those that have been watching the channel or watching the streams, I've been playing through 2 games, really. Ghosts of Yotei and Battlefield 6. Obviously, Yotei is my preferred single-player game right now. That's the main game, right? But Battlefield is something I've turned to every couple of days or so for a bit of a break. It's actually pretty good. I'm really enjoying it. Multiplayer is really good. I haven't really got around to playing the single-player game. But once I've finished playing a couple of rounds on Battlefield, then I'll go back to Yotei. Somebody on the channel, actually, I can't remember who it was, but somebody on this channel called, when you take a break from a single-player game, somebody called it a palate cleanser, right? You go on, play something else for a few days before you dive into another single-player game. Well, that's what Battlefield 6 is for me. That's my palate cleanser. I'm working my way through Yotei, and when I finish Yotei, or when I want to break from Yotei, I'll go into Battlefield 6, and then I'll move on to either back to Yotei or another single-player game. So those are the 2 big ones for me. What about you guys? What are you playing right now? Yotei. JJ, you're on your 2nd playthrough. Wow, you guys are doing well. I think, trying to remember who it was now. Somebody said on the, was it you, Tox, that said on one of the streams during the week, you're on your 3rd playthrough of Yotei. Raz, you're playing Silent Hill F and Madden 26. I mean, I'm 22 2 hours into Yote, you know, and that's I'm doing well for me. I hope to be around 30 hours in by next weekend. You know, nice and slowly. I'm not in a rush. I want to enjoy the beauty and the wonder of Ghosts of Yote. So for me, taking my time, enjoying it, it's fantastic. F, yeah. Silent Hill F. That looks good. No, not Utox. So for me personally, once I've done Yote, and I think realistically, I think I'll be on that until easily end of this month, easily, maybe even the first week in November. But once I've done that, I'm going to start working through my backlog. There's quite a few good games coming out over the next couple of months or so, but you know, like Ninja Gaiden, Arc Raiders, maybe Call of Duty if you're into that. That's a pass for me. Flight Sim on the PS5 if you've got a PSVR 2. But for me, all those games are going on my backlog, right? I'm good with Yote, and I'm going to keep playing Yote until I finish it, and I'll switch between Battlefield 6. And then I'm going to go on to Silent Hill 2 remake, but only if the PS5 Pro patch has been updated or fixed. That's my hope. If it's not, then I'm going to move on to Silent Hill F and then work through some other backlog games. And I'm looking at this long term. I'm looking at this. Well, I say long term. I'm looking at this up until around February, right? I think we've got until February, and I've got until February to take my time, because I was looking at this earlier. In February 2026, we've got, if you're into it, Neo 3 and Resident Evil Requiem coming out. That's February. 2 big games, right? Then in March, we've got Saros, Crimson Desert, and 007. That's 5 games in 2 months. I ain't got time to play those games. And then, of course, we all know what's happening in May, right? And there's other games coming out next year, but those 5 are on my radar for February, March. So I need to clear some of these backlog of games that I've got. So I want to take my time over the next couple of months and just work through my backlog. Petrov, you're 54 hours into Yote with 2 strikes. Kind of sounds like my story. I think I've only hit two of the 6 of the Yotai 6 so far. Joe, just finished Ghost of Yote and now gone back to Tsushima. Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, Tox, you're in the third part of the map, taking your time, 100%ing everything. You know, it's really difficult not to 100% stuff, because the way the game seems to be working is like you're on a mission, right? You're doing part of the main core mission, and all of a sudden, you're following these damn birds. I mean, you know, flying birds, not women, right? You're following these birds, and you're moving on to something else, and then you've got a bandit and some other. It's great. It feels kind of very organic, very natural in terms of how you're coming across and finding these camps and other little side missions. So it's distracting, but it's distracting in a nice way, I think. How you doing, Corey? GLP Gamer. Yes, the Sunday stream is back. Yeah, hopefully it'll be back permanently now. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second, about the Sunday stream. So yeah, so a lot of games coming out over the next kind of couple of months if you're into those kind of games, but the main ones for me really start from early 2026. So obviously, Joe, you've mentioned it. GLP, sorry, you've mentioned it. The stream is back. The problem with the previous Sunday streams was that you'll notice it when you see some of the tabs on this stream, is that I've taken out some content that we would normally have because it used to take so long to put together. So there's less videos on this one. What you're seeing right now, you look at your screens, you're seeing my Battlefield playthrough, and then just another bigger screen with the Battlefield playthrough. I think it's easier to prep this way than having just so much to do. Otherwise, I'm on it all weekend. So that was one of the reasons why I just pulled back a little bit for a few weeks and reintroduced the Sunday stream. But there are a couple of new segments which I'll introduce you guys to a little bit later. Bird and smoke are so distracting. 45 hours in and barely done any main missions. Yeah, it's you know what? I do like the way you organically and naturally come across and discover new missions, right? Whether the side missions or other parts, like myths and bandits and things. I do like the way they do that. So very much looking forward to kind of getting to around 30, 35 hours during the course of the week. So we've got a few things to talk about today in the podcast. So some of the topics we're going to talk about today. There we go. So could the PlayStation 6 launch in 2027? It very much looks like it is. It also feels a little bit too soon for some people. For others, it couldn't come soon enough. So the PlayStation console architect Mark Cerny, in a recent AMD video, has said that the next gen is just a few years away, and it seems pretty much on target and consistent with past console cycles of around 7 years. So 2027 seems to be almost spot on. Should it be pushed to 2028 or beyond? So that's the first discussion. We'll obviously talk a little bit about Xbox as well and their next gen console PC hybrid type thing. And then we've got the second topic, which is around coming off the back of the Ghost of Yotei discussion, which pretty much got its money back within day one, right? Sucker Punch studio head has basically said that, he said it a few weeks ago, that Ghost of Yotei had the same or similar budget to Ghost of Tsushima. Basically around $60 million, give or take. And sales data coming out confirming Ghost of Yotei is on track or tracking at the same level or similar levels to Ghost of Tsushima. Sales of around 1.6 million copies in its first few days. It'll hit 2 million in the first couple of weeks. It's made its development costs back in day one. So does that prove games don't have to be hundreds of millions of dollars to be successful? It's debatable. It's quite an interesting discussion around that. Around some people are saying you can tell there's elements in Ghost of Yotei that tell that it's not a multi-$100 million game. Other people are saying it's brilliant what they've done for what they've delivered with the budget that they had. So it's an interesting chat. I thought it would be worth discussing today. And then the third part is, if you've been following the gaming news, when is a rip-off game not a rip-off game? And this is in reference to Tencent, because they've got a game we've all seen in the news, right? Light of Mortirum, which at first glance, when you look at the marketing or the past trailers, it looks like an identical game to, or near enough identical to, Horizon. When I first saw it in 2024, I thought, yeah, this is a spin-off or a DLC, or maybe it's part 3. But it's not, and it's a game by Tencent, and Sony's in a lawsuit with Tencent and around copyright infringement and stuff like that. So we'll dive into that a little bit later on. But it is very interesting. I was looking at the detail, and there are past examples of similar cases of similar companies trying to sue each other. And it's very interesting in terms of the results. So we'll go into that. And then at the end, we'll have a look at some of the channel polls and some of the comments from you guys. Because I know I don't always get to respond to every comment. I always try my best, but I think those that have been following the channel since the early days, I think, know that it's getting harder and harder to respond to comments and go into those discussions like we used to have in the earlier days, because there's more comments on the channels. Obviously, it's grown over time, which is great, but it just makes it harder to respond to the comments. But I do see all the comments. I do read everything, and I watch how you guys interact and engage on the channel, which is brilliant. Of course, there's some weird comments and some nonsense in there, which I'll try to take out if I can, or we kind of just pass that off. But the discussions on the channel are generally very interesting. So I do listen, and I do read as much as I can, and I try to respond to as many as I can, but it's not always possible. So we'll take a look at some of those comments, and then we'll move on to something called Unscripted, which we'll have a look at the end of the podcast. That's a new segment called Unscripted. So, what are we saying on the chat before we make a move? So Tox is saying, you finally understood why people love Silent Hill 2. The game and story are a masterpiece. Yeah, really, really cracking game. The original, the second one, I'm kind of part way through, the remake that is, part way through. I'm going to wait until the patch is completed. There's some DLC coming as well, apparently. Might be early 2026. I might have to go and play it then. Yeah, Raz, you're waiting for the patch too. I see. You're 60 hours in. And one killed Yotai. Spent 4 hours doing Taziko. He's solid. That's brilliant. As long as you're having fun, mate, that's all that counts, right? As long as you're having a good time. Let's just switch back to this mode. The JJ, you're saying Ghosts of Yotai is better than Ghosts of Tsushima. Interesting. That's interesting. I love both of those games. Really do both of those games. I think Jin Sakai is fantastic. You know, amazing character. And there's nothing against Atsu. I would prefer Jin Sakai. More relatable, I think. Man to man, right? You know what I mean? But the story's great. But what Yotai does is, or Yotai, it elevates everything Tsushima did in every way. So I think technically Yotai is better. For me personally, everyone will have their own opinions. The discovery of missions is better. The world is better. The interaction with the world is done better. I think the fighting and the action is better. The stance system is debatable. Some people like the stance system from Tsushima. Some people like the weapon system from Yotai. And of course, some people will prefer Jin Sakai to Atsu. That's, again, it's debatable. Both amazing games. You know, Sucker Punch have done an absolutely sterling job. GLP Gamer, you're saying it depends. And this is in reference to the cost of games. Some of your best games are AA or indie with small budget. All depends on the story, gameplay, and artwork. Completely agree. Corey, you're saying, I think that if they release the PlayStation 6 in 2027, it will be extremely difficult to have a successful launch. The next wave of games will have to be pushing base PS5 to an extreme level to justify the need for more powerful hardware. Yeah, I mean, we've still, what was the figure? I'm trying to think. It was around 50 million PlayStation 4 gamers right now, give or take, right? 80 million, give or take, PS5 players right now, PS5 gamers. When GTA 6 comes out, we know people will go from PS4 to PS5. Not all of them, but a lot of people will. That's a system seller. So people will jump. But if the PS6 comes out, we'll have this chat in more detail later, but if the PS6 does come out in 2027, potentially Sony could be supporting 3 generations of systems. And you have to think, surely it's going to affect the way games are made. I know Sony are not really supporting PS4 games technically with the new stuff coming out, but those new games are still going to support PS5. There's no way they're going to leave 100 plus million gamers behind on the PS5 console and only make all their games for the PS6. It's not going to happen. You might get 1, maybe 2 games just for the PS6, like when we had Demon Souls remake or remaster and Ratchet and Clank just for the PS5, showing off the tech and stuff like that. So we'll go into more detail later, but there's no way we're going to get games in volume for only the PS6, which is disappointing because I want to see what that system can do. And there's going to be cross-gen for so many years. So you have to ask that question. Are we really pushing the PS6 technology and generation in the first 3 or 4 years? The answer is probably going to be no, right? It's always going to be midway through and then towards the end of the PS6 console generation. So we'll have that chat a little bit later on. And then we'll move on to the topics of discussion in a second. Toxic saying Tencent brute forced their way in. Sony had already declined the offer. Yeah, that was The Last of Us. Tencent wanted to do a mobile version and Sony declined. And Tencent just went off and copied, well, allegedly copied Horizon. JJ, you prefer Atsu over Jin? That's fine. That's fine. You know, everyone's entitled to prefer whatever they want. That's good. I'm just glad you're enjoying the games. That's what, you know, that's what it's about, right? Enjoy the games. GLP Gamer, you're saying story-wise, it's Tsushima for the win, but everything else for me, Yotai takes the win. Yeah, it's a tough choice, you know. It really is a tough choice. I'm just thinking, what's next for Sucker Punch? How do they... Because the idea was that Yotai was going to be one-up on Tsushima, and in many cases they've done that. But how do they one-up on Yotai? How do they, you know, take it to another level? Do they continue with Japan, or do they move to another territory? Do they go to another country? Medieval Europe, knights, swords, stuff like that, or do they go somewhere else? America, right? Native American Indians and all that kind of stuff. Native American people, or do they go to Australia? It's interesting. I think they'll stick with Japan. Hopefully go around and maybe do another part to Jin Sakai. So maybe go back 300 years and continue with Jin Sakai. It's an interesting debate. Corey, you actually agree with that statement? Yote is phenomenal and a better game than Tsushima. Personally, I like Atsu as a character more than I like Jin. Atsu seems like a more fully realized character. Yeah, I'm only part way through, so I've only got to the bit where have a look at my stream. Have a look at my stream. Where are we? Can I add something to the stream here? Let me just see. Hopefully this doesn't crash anything. That's my Ghost of Yote stream. I think you may have seen some of it, but I think I've got 2 kills so far out of the 6. Just got the Kitsune. Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. This game is amazing. I say you're saying with PSSR 2.0 on the Pro, it might not be worth it. I think those that have picked up the PS5 Pro may not realize the improvements on the PS6, or may not see much of an improvement. Those that are on the base PS5 and then you go to the base PS6, you're obviously going to see a bigger impact and a bigger improvement, because you'll have the next version of PSSR, right, with all the updates. It's a tricky one, but for me, I'm already in. I'm going to get the PS6 anyway. I don't care when it comes out. Even if it comes out tomorrow, I'll probably just get it. I'm a sucker for stuff like that, and especially as I'm already kind of bought into the PlayStation ecosystem. Tox Bloodborne remake PS6. Oh yeah, you know what? That will shift systems. That will full back compact. That won't happen because of the PlayStation subscription, but can only dream, right? We can only dream. Hey, Sax Max, good to have the podcast, but yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to be back. Corey, you don't mind cross-generation games? I only hope gamers do a better job understanding improvement in the overall experience in the next generation versus past generation. Yeah, you know what? We're always going to see whatever happens, whenever a game comes out, whatever system comes out, whatever we see, there's always going to be toxicity everywhere. So I've seen it with every game that comes out, right? There's games that are not even out and people are dumping all over. Wolverine's not even out and people are dumping all over that. It's ridiculous. Yet they haven't played these games. Half of these people haven't played Hogwarts and they were crapping over that. They were dumping all over Assassin's Creed Shadows against Ghost of Yote. So many games are getting, and it's just small minority of vocal people. So my personal view is going to be, I'm going to get the PS6, I'm going to play it, and I'm going to have a great time. Screw everybody else, really. Tox PSSR 2.0 is FSR4. It's the FSR. It's the PlayStation bespoke version of FSSR4 on the PS6, or the PSSR 2.0, hopefully before GTA 6 comes out. JJ, you're saying, yo, B, what would you like to see Sucker Punch next game be? I wouldn't mind another Ghost of... Yeah, I personally, if they're not going to make a new IP and they're not going to expand their team, because they've already said that they're looking for... They're looking to do one project at a time. Personally, if they're not going to do a new IP, I want them to go back before Atsu, before Yote, back to Jin Sakai and make a sequel. So this is a little bit afterwards. He's now the Ghost of Tsushima. He's a wanted man, and he will never have honor. All right, he's according to them, according to the family, he's betrayed everybody. So, and he saved his uncle. So I would like to see a follow up to that personally, but I don't mind. Sucker Punch haven't let me down. I have full faith in whatever they do. They just let them crack on with it. We're not going to see anything they make for 5 years, right? 5 or 6 years. So it'll be a PlayStation 6 game, whatever they make next. Sax Max, no spoilers, please. Yeah, no, exactly. No, I should have said that at the start, actually. Yeah, we're not doing spoilers. We're just talking about our own kind of playthroughs, how we like the game, but no detail, please, guys. No detail. Corey saying Yotai's better in every way, in every measurable way than Tsushima. I agree. I think Yotai's brilliant. I think Yotai's one-upped Tsushima. The only thing I want from Tsushima is Jin Sakai. Anyway, ISA, I think it's dropping around the same time as GTA 6. The handheld, yeah. Oh, yeah, we got the handheld. What we don't know, though, we don't know what's first. We don't know if they're coming out at the same time. I doubt they'll come out at the same time. Maybe the PlayStation 6 first, and then the following year, the handheld comes out. But it's coming out, whatever happens. Can't wait, though. Cannot wait for the handheld. I've been debating about whether I get the Portal, but I'm not going to get it now. I'm all in on the handheld whenever that comes out. Yeah, Pro is absolutely worth it when you've got a high-end OLED. Those colours popping on HDR, it's absolutely phenomenal. GLP Gamer, you've got the PlayStation 5 Pro and you'll get the PS6 day one. Same here. Yeah, can't wait. Tox, you've just heard that the Demon Souls is the testbed for the new handheld from Sony. The game recently got a patch for lower power mode. It's definitely coming. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wasn't aware that the Demon Souls game is a testbed. I'll look into that. But the thing is, right, this is what's going to happen with the handheld. Obviously, it's not going to play PlayStation 6 games. It'll play PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games. It may play some PS6 games later, but not straight away, because you know what Sony's like, right? If you want to play PlayStation 6 games, you have to have a PlayStation 6. When those PS6 games eventually go to PC, then they'll be unlocked for handheld devices. My worry is, this is my concern, and it's around physical media. My God, we're 40 minutes in. I haven't even started the podcast yet, really. my worry is the PlayStation 6 and the PS5 and PS4 games that you'll eventually play one day, eventually, on your handheld. They're all digital games, right? So this is just going to drive more people towards it. And not that I have an issue with digital. It worries me that the percentage of physical games that are going to be coming out are going to be reducing even more. And not only that, actually, it makes sense to buy digital games if you can then use those digital games on your handheld. You know, and that makes sense. And especially if one day PlayStation come out with their own PS launcher for PC, a bit like what Xbox does, you know, you can play your games anywhere. You can't do that with physical games unless you do it via remote play. So I can see some of these physical libraries kind of just shrinking, because it makes such good sense to get digital games if they work on your handheld and they work on your console, and maybe they work on your PC too. I don't know. It's just a thought, really. It's because someone mentioned, was it you, GLP, that you mentioned the handheld? So, Corey, you're saying the problem with the cross-generation games argument is that gamers online downplay the fact that PlayStation 5 brought with it options for gaming. PS4, 90% of games for 30 frames per second. Now we get quality modes and performance modes, yet people act like performance mode only exists. Yeah, no, this is the thing about the online side of things. People only push forward their own narrative, right? It fits their own narrative. So they're not going to say you can play these games with using PSSR, you can get 4K 60, or you can go for other ray tracing modes, like on Yotai, I'm playing ray tracing Pro. They won't mention things like that. They'll just talk about just small detail upgrades. They won't tell you the whole story and give you all the options. Petrov is saying PS6 day one. Cheers, Tox. Appreciate that. PS6 is going to be an AI-driven powerhouse. Yeah, I'm fascinated. I can't wait to get more technical details. Anyway, right, 40 minutes in, we haven't started the podcast. So get ready, get your snacks ready, right? Relax, get a drink. Non-alcoholic, if you don't mind. Enjoy the podcast, guys. And just before we start, hit that like button. Don't forget, hit that like button. So I just want to say, before we really begin, I thought about this. I had to write this down. Before we begin the main part of the topic, I want us to pause and reflect. Michael Eugene Archer, also known as D'Angelo, whose name today carries both grief and awe across the music world and beyond. Last week, news broke that he passed away aged just 51 after a battle with cancer. Fans everywhere paused, reflected, and reminisced about his music. Many of you first know D'Angelo as the voice behind Untitled. How Does It Feel? That haunting, sparse, emotionally raw track and video that became iconic, but his influence rang far deeper. He was pivotal in neo-soul, blending gospel, jazz, R&B, and funk, always with a commitment to authenticity. From Brown Sugar to Voodoo to Black Messiah, D'Angelo's discography was lean, but it was powerful. He was known to retreat, to struggle, and to wrestle with fame, but he always returned to music as a space for honesty and healing. For us in the gaming world, one of his biggest final contributions is particularly resonant. His track, Unshaken, for Red Dead Redemption 2 is infamous. If you've experienced that stretch in the game of Red Dead Redemption 2, when Arthur Morgan rides back across plains, or the wind carries echoes of regret and resolve, you feel unshaken in your bones. The track, right, it's not there as background music. It's an emotional architecture at its best. It's a moment of stillness, reflection of everything that's happened to Arthur Morgan in the game. Fans also recalled, and this was in a number of the articles, that fans have also recalled that D'Angelo had once been a playtester for Red Dead Redemption 2, drawn simply by the love of the series. He was a gamer at heart, and he loved Red Dead Redemption games. He didn't approach it as a celebrity cameo. He approached it as a fan and as a creator. And that humility, that blend of fan and artist, it speaks to how grounded he remained. Even in excellence, he will be remembered forever. And across the world of video games, we lost another towering figure. Tomonobu Itagaki, developer, designer, and pioneer. This week, the legendary Itagaki passed away, aged only 58 years old. Itagaki's name is inseparable from Ninja Gaiden, Dead or Alive, and the legacy of Team Ninja. His bold, visceral style, his appetite for pushing technical limits, his brash persona, all became part of the action gaming genre. He was not introverted. He carried a fire and a passion. He had a flair for spectacle. He insisted on challenge, on movement and intensity. He shaped the way we think of action and swordplay, fluid combos, the dance between precision and risk. When he launched Ninja Gaiden in its modern reincarnation, he redefined difficulty for many players. He was one of those creators who didn't cater to the lowest common denominator. He wasn't for the casual gamers. He pushed boundaries. He set standards. In fact, he raised standards, even if that polarized or frustrated some gamers. And yes, many people were frustrated, and that's why he was adorned by so many of us. He also co-founded Team Ninja, previously called Tecmo Ninja. His mark is in every slash, in every dodge, every camera spin, and every moment of adrenaline. He was 58 years old, not ancient by any measure. He may have had many years ahead with many more games within him. His passing feels really abrupt, definitely gone far too soon. And his style influenced generations of action designers. Those who followed Ninja Gaiden, Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, Sekiro, and many other games like it. The DNA of modern action games owes something to his swagger. His insistence on challenge plus elegance. So two brilliant lights, one from Soul, one from Code and Pixels, both extinguished, leaving voids in creative worlds. And yet what remains is deep. As creators, audiences, players, and fans, we will miss their presence. But we can honor their legacy by daring to create, daring to feel, and daring to push boundaries. So I just wanted to say that about the two that passed away last week. They're going to have a huge impact. in the creative industries. Okay. Let's have a look at the first article. The first one's about the PlayStation 6. And for some reason, every time I did this beforehand, before I started the podcast, the blue light, the frame around the image freezes. I don't know what it is, but I'm not that bothered about it, really, to be honest. So let's move on and take a look at our first topic then. So PlayStation 6 could be out in 2027. So we've pretty much had the first official confirmation from Sony that PS6 is in development, whereas previously it was all rumors and hearsay, but now it's all official. And the real question is it too soon to be talking about the next generation of gaming in terms of consoles? There's multiple articles, and I've took this one from, I think you can see that. That's from Push Square. Yep. Okay. So as always, we'll take a look at the source material, and then we'll have a chat about it. So this is from Push Square, and it says, you can read that. Yep. So to quote PlayStation console architect Mark Cerny in a recent AMD video, next gen is just a few years away, and it seems the target, consistent with past console release cycles, is 2027. We're beginning to get fairly regular and frequent leaks and updates regarding the future format from a handful of reliable and reputable sources, with Kepler L2, a notorious hardware snoop over the years, saying it's the plan to release the PS6 in 2027 unless unexpected delays occur. That would align pretty perfectly with what Cerny himself has said, and what would be consistent with the 7-year cycle of the PlayStation 4. There's been some debate recently whether Microsoft will even have a new console, but the firm rebutted reports that it had cancelled its hardware plans last weekend. Now, a leak from YouTuber Moore's Law is Dead claims Xbox is also planning to deploy a new device in 2027, although whether it will be a traditional console or some kind of hybrid PC remains to be seen. According to hardware leaks from the aforementioned source, who accurately reveal the makeup of the PlayStation 5 Pro, the next Xbox, should it reach the market, will be packing more horsepower than the PlayStation 6, but it is also likely to be considerably more expensive. Obviously, we'll need to wait and see what real-world advantages the Microsoft hardware has over Sony's effort and how much it all actually matters. Many fans feel like we've already reached the point of diminishing returns, so a few extra frames for potentially hundreds of dollars may not be a compelling proposition, especially when retailers are beginning to remove Microsoft's current effort, the Xbox Series X and S, from stores. And to be honest, we're still at least 18 months away from learning about each manufacturer's next generation plans, and a lot could change in that time. While we're at that stage in the cycle now, there's okay, don't need to worry about the rest. Potential specs could change, we know that. So what do you think? What are your thoughts, guys? PlayStation 6. Is it too soon for the PlayStation 6 to be coming out in 2027? Corey, you're a big home theatre gamer yourself, playing on the big screen. That's what we like to see. Corey is saying, I really hope Ninja Gaiden 4, the camera is able to keep up with the action. Playing Ninja Gaiden 2 Black made me realise how bad the camera was. The camera was the real boss in that game, yeah. Petrov is saying Holiday 2028 is good for you. That's better. So Tox is saying Tom from Moore's Law is Dead said he has actual documentation of when the PlayStation 6 is going into mass production. He says 2027. Yeah, I heard they've got things signed off. Production's going to start early 2027 with a release coming October, November 2027. So everything points towards a 2027 release for the PS6. Corey, you're saying, I don't think PS6 is 2027. You think it's 2029, maybe 2030. Oh, wow. Games take longer to develop, so it's harder to keep pumping out hardware at a meaningful enough update to push people out. Wow. You know what? If it comes out in 2020, 2028, 2029, 2030, I'm okay with it. I'm not in any rush, but whenever it comes out, I'm getting it. I can't see Sony delaying it beyond 2027. I just can't see it happening. GLP Gamer, you're saying Xbox is too erratic to invest in. And you're saying 2027 is fine for you? Yeah, people don't buy hardware for hardware's sake. We buy for games. The games will push the system. Yeah, I agree. GLP, I think Xbox is going full third party, dropping the hardware. So I'm in two minds about this. And there's a pro and there's a con, right? There's a reason for it. There's a reason against it. So if I'm looking at 2027, it does fit the traditional console life cycle. So you look back at the PS4, it launched in 2013. The PS5 came out in 2020. 7-year gap. So 2027 seems to line up with that pattern, right? And it seems to line up with what the leakers are saying. It seems to line up with what kind of the technical insiders, people have got these leaks right before. It fits that narrative. A lot of gamers also want 2027, right? It also gives enough time for those technical leaps, not marginal ones, right? Hardware, we know hardware is always innovative and it's always moving forward. The leaks suggest both Microsoft and Sony are planning for 2027. AMD's partnering with them. And if the PS6 can make real use of advances in GPU and SSD and AI-driven upscaling, then we can finally see something bridging the gap between kind of the high-end console and the mid-level, maybe even the high-end PCs. Having said that, PS5 Pro, I'm absolutely happy with it. It's stunning. It does wonders. Gameplay's buttery smooth where it's been fully optimized. But from a developer perspective, if they get the PS6, then the prospect of a new console, create bigger worlds, smoother gameplay, smarter NPCs, integrated AI systems, faster loading times, it's just going to take it to another level. And another point to consider, Moore's Law is dead. He went on to say that Xbox is going to be coming out in 2027. And the last time Sony released a console, 1 year after Xbox 360, it nearly got annihilated. Although there were some other, I don't want to say mitigating circumstances because Sony brought it amongst themselves. But when they launched the PS3, they screwed up the pricing. And at that time, Microsoft and Xbox were aligned, right? They had lots of exclusive deals. They had lots of big hitting games that came out first on Xbox. And it just brought the market share over to Xbox's side of things. So I don't want to say Xbox can never get to that position before. You never know, right? You never know what's going to happen in industry. But I don't think Sony will take the chance. If Xbox releases their console in 2027, I think Sony will release their console in 2027. Regardless of whether it's a PC hybrid or whatever it is. Sax, you're saying, Sax Max, you're going to get a PS6 at launch. Raz PS6, 100% holiday 2027 release. Everything points to that and fits Sony's usual timetable. Corey, you're getting it regardless, but I can't see games being at this point where it's a big enough jump to move. No, I don't. I don't think games will be. I don't think there'll be, unless there's another, a Ratchet type game coming out, a Demon Souls type game where it's just made specific, like a Demon Souls was a remake. What if they say, hey guys, we're going to make a Killzone and an Infamous remake only for the PlayStation 6 because it's made only playable on PlayStation 6. It's it's a shorter version technically, and maybe we can get an internal studio. Maybe Bluepoint can work on it, or Nix's Studios. or maybe we partner with a second party studio. And those games, those remakes and remasters are only playable on the PlayStation 6. It will start to shift people that way. Bloodborne. One of you guys mentioned it on the chat. Bloodborne, right? A Bloodborne remake, PlayStation 6 only. That's going to move people onto it. I look at it from my perspective, and I always tend to buy new consoles whenever they come out. So whenever it's coming out, I'm getting it. Don't bother me when. Yeah. So that's the positive stuff. There's obviously negatives to look at it as well. There's negative things. So we're in the middle of the PlayStation 5 console generation, right? Many people haven't even got the PlayStation 5. Some people have only just got their hands on it. Yeah, after years of shortages, inflation, price rises, and stuff like that. Millions of people are still on PlayStation 4. They've got no reason to jump to PS5 yet. Especially not until games like GTA 6, those kind of system sellers come out. So they're not jumping. So if they don't see value moving from PS4 to PS5, will they see value moving from PS4 to PS6? Maybe. But are they going to pay, I don't know, whatever it's going to cost, £500, £600, £700? I don't know. Then there's an argument for developers. Still, developers are not fully optimizing PS5 games, right? A lot of games are coming out for the PS5 Pro, and they're still not fully optimized. Now, hopefully PSSR 2.0, or the update, makes it easier for the developers to optimize PlayStation 5 games that are third party for the PS5 Pro. But developers are still learning from it. So is it still too soon for the PS6? Now they're going to have to learn how to develop for that system and optimize. Maybe it is too soon for the PS6. You know, we're finally seeing proper next-gen experiences on the PlayStation 5 and the PS5 Pro, right? Games like Spider-Man 2, Astrobot, Alan Wake 2, Forbidden West, Burning Shores, the DLC, that was better than the main game. Assassin's Creed Shadows, Death Stranding 2, Ghost of Yotei. I'm sure I've missed games off that list that you found to be absolutely amazing this generation, despite some of the problems that we've had with stock shortages, shortages during the COVID supply chain issues and stuff like that. I mean, even Returnal, who some consider that to be one of the best PlayStation 5 games, it still looks fantastic. We're only really just starting to scratch the surface of what the PlayStation 5 can actually do. We've only just stopped making games for PlayStation 5, making games for PS4. So we're still supporting the PlayStation 4 generation up until last gen. Isn't Call of Duty PS4, right? I'm sure it is. So there's still developers out there supporting PlayStation 4. So how much hardware how much software are we really going to have, which is only catered specifically for the PS6? It's going to be kind of few and far between, right, for the first few years. So I think that's going to be a problem. And don't forget, during the PlayStation 5, we've had, I think we've had 2 years wasted opportunities with COVID issues, stock shortages. We've had the mess that Sony first-party studios found themselves in. We've had cancelled games, cancelled projects, studio restructuring, question marks over acquisitions, studio closures, leadership changes. It feels like this next gen has been stumbling and bumbling around. But despite all that, we've had some amazing games, brilliant games. So are we ready? Are the developers ready to start making games for the PS6? I'm not sure they are. This is my argument against it, right? Are people going to be ready to shell out hundreds of dollars more for an extra, I don't know, extra few frames? Is that really going to happen? I don't know. And our game's going to be held back because we're still making games for PS4, PS5. A lot of questions, isn't there? A lot of questions to ask. So let's have a look then. Raz, you're saying you'd be shocked if PS6 dropped after 2027. Either way, we are PS fans. We're getting it. Yeah, exactly. Whenever it's coming out, we will get it. But I think it's interesting to see what people's views are. Some people want it earlier, some people want it later, and I'm interested to hear the arguments for and against. Tox, you've jumped into Bloodborne. I've not played that for a long time. I want to hold back. Same reason for holding back on going back and revisiting Red Dead Redemption 2. The patch is just around the corner. So, you know, that's another couple of months I'll be kind of living in Red Dead Redemption world when that game comes out. I want to hold off Bloodborne until that patch is ready, whenever it is. Corey saying Ratchet-style Demon Souls kind of caliber games need to be in development right now. It needs to be at RT 4K, 60 FPS, 120 FPS masterpiece. Sony said the technology was still in the concept phase. Yeah, that's the only thing that concerns me. When they released every console generation, when they released the PS3, the PS4, the PS5, literally a few months later they start that conceptualization phase. What's the next console going to be? And that conceptualization phase could take a couple of years, right? 2022, 2023. So when I don't think, I think Sony knows what they want. They've got an idea that they're almost there in terms of this is what the PS6 is going to be in terms of hardware. It's just the final bits now, getting that cost down, getting it ready to go. I mean, they still have time. If the plan or the leak was that they're going to get manufacturing started in 2027, they still have the first half of 2026 really to make these final last calls. I think it will come out 2027. And I think they've got studios behind the scenes that are working on 1 or 2 games, and it will only be a couple of games because they're not going to leave 100+ million PlayStation 5 gamers by having games only locked to PS6. They'll do it with a couple to make people move. They did it with Demon Souls, did it with Ratchet and Clank. I think they're going to do it with 2 games of similar size, right? So a remake, remaster type game, or a small experience like another Astrobot game, for example, right? Take 2 or 3 years to make, get it onto the PlayStation 6. It's next gen only. And then maybe another Ratchet and Clank, maybe something else, maybe a remake, a remaster style game. But I think they will have something in the pipeline for when that PlayStation 6 launches. Oh man, I haven't talked this much since the last podcast. What else have we got here? So PSSR 2.0 will be great. I really think so. It's meant to make development a lot easier for games that are being optimized for the PS5 Pro. At the minute, there's still some problems with, can't remember the exact wording, but how the files are arranged and organized. The update to PSSR 2 will make it a lot easier for developers to go through that phase. I don't know the exact technical terminology for it. So Corey is saying there's nothing in the games pipeline right now that would point to 2027. If we go by what Mark Sony said, then they're still in the early days of hardware creation. You can't develop for hardware that doesn't exist yet. True. That's true. It's a good point. That is a good point. The thing is, we don't know what every studio is working on behind the scenes. There's still uncertainty and question marks as to what games are being developed. Toxies think both Sony and Xbox are not ready for Unreal Engine 5. There's Unreal Engine 5 seems to have a lot of glitches, right? There's a lot of games that come out that seem to have one sort of problem or another. And every time you hear about the problem, it's always a game made in Unreal Engine 5. Corey, you reckon you think they know what the concept is? They need chips. The RDNA 5 Radiant Core hardware needs to be built first, then they can test it with new games. I think that whole process is at least 4 to 5 years away. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I cannot unless they go for the architecture will still need to be, unless they go for a lower powered PS6 and then a beast of a Pro for PS6. But again, the architecture will still need to be the same, so that even that would be years away. But I cannot imagine the PlayStation 6 coming out in 2029 or 2030. 2020. What calendar date is 2030, by the way? Oh, right. The GLP gaming is saying if you see a game in Unreal Engine 5, it instantly puts you off. The only thing that worries me about engines like Unreal Engine 5 is sometimes you can see assets that are very similar across a number of games, and it doesn't give you the impression that every asset has been bespokely built for that one game that you want to play. You get what I mean? That's my only worry with it. And there's obviously some technical problems with Unreal Engine 5. Toxie saying the Sony and AMD collaboration is excellent. I agree. So I guess we're all divided, and this is the situation. Right? We're all divided about where the where we land on whether we want a PlayStation 6 in 2027 or later. But if the leaks are right, the PlayStation 6, according to the leaks, is still 2 years away from release, and a lot can happen. We know the specs can change. We know the pricing can change. The release date could change, right? Sony and AMD could redefine what they're looking for. I think, Corey, you mentioned it. You briefly touched on it in the chat. You know, what does next generation mean? Are we talking about more power, or are we talking about new experiences, new ways to play? For me, the power discussion is gone. All these consoles, you know, they're as powerful as each other. I don't care about a few frames here and there, right? Honestly, if you can do 60 frames, I'm happy with that. I want to play a game where the AI is built into the game design, right? I want to play a game where every level is random, just random. You go into a level. Imagine you're playing the next God of War, right? Or the next Last of Us Part 3. Think back to Ghost of Yotei. No spoilers, but think back to when you go to Ghost of Yotei and you play a mission and you get to a camp, right? There's 10 enemies, 12 enemies. They're pretty much in the same spot, same position, same repetitive action movement, right? I want AI to be used where, you know what, you go into a camp and it's random. There's between 10 and 50 enemies. It's random. Their movements are random. Their patterns are random. You haven't got a clue what they're going to do. And it never repeats the same pattern twice. I want to see that built into a game where you can die and you can reload that level, but it won't play the same. It will be completely different. That's what I want in the way games are designed. I want games to be designed completely differently. And I don't care about the power element. All these systems are going to be as powerful as each other, in all honesty. So that's what I want for next generation gaming. What do you guys want? What are you looking for? Are you looking for deeper AI? Are you looking for power? Are you looking for backwards compatibility? What are you looking for in your next console? Whether it comes out in 2027, 2028, 2029, it doesn't bother me. It's not a problem. It really isn't. I'm already invested in Sony. I'm invested in the PlayStation, the consoles, and the game. So long as the single player games are there, and it's always going to be about the single player games, then I'm already in. So here you go, Sony. Take my credit card. Charge me whatever you want. That's my view on it right now. Personally, I think if it comes out in 2028, that's quite nice because I can still have another 2 and a bit years on my PlayStation 5 Pro. I'm happy with that. If it comes out sooner, no problem. If it comes out later, no problem. But let me know what you think about your expectations for what do you want that's different on the PlayStation 6. What are you looking for? Power? Is it the way games are designed and built specifically from the ground up? Because if games are built differently, they cannot be back compatible with PlayStation 5 or PS4 if they're designed differently with only features available on the PlayStation 6. You get what I mean, right? So that's what I want. I want games that are just built completely different, things that we've never seen before. So GLP Gamer, you're saying the Unreal Engine 5 gameplay is usually boring. Some developers put it off and make it good, but most don't. Petrov, you're saying Expedition 33 was great on Unreal Engine 5. You know what, Petrov? I've heard so many great things about Clay Obscure Expedition 33. I've heard so many great things about it, and it's not even a 60, 70 pound game. It's like 45 pounds, I think, in the UK. Might even be cheaper. It's one of those games on my backlog that I want to go. The only thing that puts me off, sorry, the only thing that puts me off is it's a turn-based game, and I don't know how I feel about turn-based games. But I will look into it because I heard the soundtrack is incredible. The story's great, and the game generally is very good. So, and because the price point is very, very reasonable, it's one of those games that I'm tempted to pick up during maybe a Black Friday, Christmas sale type thing. Razzie saying, it always depends on how the developers implement software, just like how some understand how to optimize for the pro and others don't. Konami. Yeah. Tox, you're saying, I honestly just want more games from Konami. Konami has a fantastic library of games. I think listening to a lot of the kind of reports and things coming out, it feels as if they're going to greenlight a lot of their older games. We're already seeing what they're doing with the Silent Hill games. And of course, they're making new games like Silent Hill F. Number 1's going to get remastered, which is great. But they're also doing the same with the Metal Gear games, right? So it looks like they're going to bring the Metal Gear games back to life and then start a new generation of Metal Gear games. I don't know how I feel about that because it doesn't have Hideo Kojima as part of it. It's going to be a new team, new developers, new ideas. But, you know, I'm not going to criticize them. I'm not going to judge them. Let them make their original new series of Metal Gear games. We'll play the first one and then we'll take it from there. Sax Max, you're saying, I want the standard moving forward to be 60 FPS. No more 30 FPS option. Give me that and you're happy. Yeah, honestly, I thought we were going to get standard 30 FPS this generation. Just not been possible, unfortunately. Hopefully that is a absolute minimum required. Every game is 60 FPS, 30 frames left behind when the PS6 generation kicks in. Expedition 33 turn-based combat is really good. Cheers, GLP Gamer. I am going to get that. It'll just go onto my backlog. Tox, you can't do turn-based. You've tried it with Final Fantasy. Integrate is better. Petrov, 900 hours in Baldur's Gate 3. Is Baldur's Gate 3 turn-based? I haven't played that. Isn't that kind of like a not exactly a top down? It's kind of a side, but an elevated view. I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons why I didn't get it, because it was either turn based or an elevated view, and I wanted it in physical, and they only had digital at the time. Elden Ring numbers, yeah, man. This needs a bit of oil. This is creaking. Expedition 33 is decent. It's not great. The things we criticize are the games for we give the Expedition 33 a pass for because they're a smaller studio. If we're going to compare it to a AAA game, then we have to hold it to AAA game standards. When we do that, it is seriously lacking. Yeah, I suppose smaller studios can get away with stuff, can't they? They can get away with... I think people there's more leeway. People give small teams a little bit more leeway with their games just because they have a team of 30 or 40 people building a game. Yeah, turn-based. No. Okay, maybe Baldur's Gate goes on my backlog for some other time then. Okay. So, there's no right or wrong answer with this. You know, the PS6 is going to come out when it's ready, but I suppose no one's really said I'm not getting a PS6. Yeah, I think we're all going to get it when we feel it's the right time. You know, if it's got software that's really going to push it, it will entice more people towards picking it up day one or within the first few months. Some people are just going to get it day one anyway because it's the the latest must have, and you get carried away with the hype. I get carried away with it. I don't care what, if it has 0 games, I'm still going to buy it. I'm stupid like that, right? So it is one of these things. Personally, I think 2020. I think it's going to come out 2027. We'll have to come back to this. We'll circle back to this discussion at some point in 2026 when we have a bit more detail. Because if it is coming out in 2027, then we're going to get like tech specs and more leaks about the internal components and things. We'll get all that at some point next year. These leakers, what's his name? Moore's Law is dead, and Kepler L2. These guys will start leaking stuff, and we'll get more clarity. Tox, you tried Baldur's Gate 3. You couldn't get past the character create. Okay, well, you're really selling it to me, man. You're really selling it to me. Okay. So let's have a look at the next topic. Let's move on to the next part then. So this is about Ghosts of Yotei. Let's open up the other link. Again, I've taken this from Push Square. So a couple of people have actually mentioned this in the comments. I read all the comments that come through. Does Ghosts of Yotei's success prove that games don't have to cost, in the hundreds of millions of dollars to make to be successful? That's the discussion point. Do we need these massive budgets to have great games? And also, I've picked this report up from Push Square. So have a quick read through. So, Ghosts of Yotei, the latest historical sandbox from Seattle studio Sucker Punch, is crushing it. According to sales data emerging out of Europe, which compiles both physical and digital data, the sequel is selling in line with its predecessor, Ghosts of Tsushima, which launched to a much more mature PlayStation 4 install base during the height of the pandemic. It's actually Sony's biggest new PlayStation 5 release since Marvel's Spider-Man 2, although cynics may argue that there hasn't really been much competition. Ultimately, it means it's outperforming the likes of Stellar Blade, Rise of Ronin, and even Helldivers 2, although we are just specifically looking at launch week sales here. The latter obviously went on to become phenomenal across PlayStation and PC. So despite all this success, Ghosts of Yotei couldn't overtake EA Sports FC 26, which naturally topped the GSD European sales charts for the week ending the 5th of October. Let me just add here, these are combined physical and digital sales. Actually, Yotei beat EA Sports FC on physical sales. Most people don't buy EA Sports physically. We know physical's on the decline. Most people picked up EA Sports digitally. It's an annual release. It comes out every year. It just makes sense to buy it digitally. So obviously Yotei was going to beat that. Other new releases that made the top 10: Digimon Story, Time Stranger, Final Fantasy Tactics. Here we go. Let's have a look at the European top 10 sales. This is week ending October the 5th. Yotei at number 2. Far Cry Primal, number 6. Doom Eternal, number 5. These are unit sales. And then we have the revenue, which is the second list here. So revenue, Ghost of Yotei, second 2. Final Fantasy Tactics, number 5. Borderlands, Silent Hill, number 7. Assassin's Creed Shadow still in there at number 10. So that's the article. Phenomenal success from Ghosts of Yotei. But if we're talking about success of Yote, which had a modest budget, what are we saying? Are we saying games should be around that level, $50 to $60 million? It's an incredibly profitable game. I mean, what makes it interesting is the game is a single player campaign. It's an action adventure game set in Japan. It's stylish, cinematic. It's got brilliant combat and beautiful art direction. All the stuff you'd expect from a big studio. But Sucker Punch, even though it's a Sony first party studio making great Ghost games, from a first party AAA studio perspective, it's actually a relatively small or mid-sized team. They've got like 250 people working for the studio, whereas a lot of the other big AAA studios have 800-900 people, 1,000 plus. So in terms of budget, the game cost reportedly $60 million, same as Tsushima, somewhere around that figure. But in terms of AAA, it's practically a modest budget. And yet the game looks like it could sit next to the biggest releases of any year. It's stunning. How did they do it? So how have Sucker Punch released another game following on from Tsushima, and both have been absolutely smash hits? How have they done it? What's their formula? Petroff saying between 50 to 100 million. Corey is saying you love Baldur's Gate 3. It's a big game. And the fact that there are so many paths through the game that it can be literally played for years. You'll never look up things about the game. Yeah, it's on my backlog. I'm going to have to go back to it at some stage. 70 million. Tox, you're saying? 70 million. So when you look at Tsushima and you look at Ghost of Yote, both games are, they're not 200-hour epics, are they? Let's be honest, right? If you look at the story, I know we've had a little chat earlier about getting kind of 50 hours in, and we've only done two of the Yotai 6 and stuff like that. The story, the single player story is supposed to be 25 to 30 hours before the game come out. It's supposed to be a 25 to 30 hour single player experience. I'm 22 hours in. I've only done 2 of the Yote 6. But when you go through the single player story, and that's 25 to 30 hours, with all the side content and the extra things to do, it's actually quite long. You can easily play 70, 80 hours in the game. But it's all contained, right? It's done in an organic way where you find missions, you find extra bits to do, side quests and so on, rather than them feeling like a bit of a fetch quest. The other thing that Sucker Punch have done is, I think somebody mentioned this in the comments during the week, they have obviously reused many of the assets and the tech, some of the animation rigs from earlier projects in Ghosts of Tsushima. Nothing wrong with that. After all, we're in the same world, right? So instead of building everything from scratch, they kept their team relatively focused, small, and agile, which meant less money lost on production, bureaucracy, and creating new assets. Certainly to the extent of creating a brand new game with new environments. And the other thing about this game is they never went into this saying, look, we're going to create the next biggest, best ever AAA game. They just said, we're going to create a great game. Right? It's set in Japan, 300 years after Tsushima. This is our story. And it's fantastic. It's worked. The audience, the reviewers, the community, you guys, those who have played it, those that are playing it right now, we love it. We absolutely love it. Because here's the thing, right? I don't think players, I mean this in the nicest way, I don't think we care about the price of development, right? Let me reference that. I don't think we care about how much it costs to make a game. We care about the experience, the gameplay experience. Of course, we care about whether a studio is sustainable, Yeah, we care about it. Of course we do. We want to know that a studio hasn't wasted all its money, because if it has, it means it's going to be bad things, redundancies, layoffs, people are going to lose their jobs, games might get cancelled. We don't want that to happen. So from that perspective, of course we care about the studios, but we don't really care about the budgets. We want good games, right? When you see a game overall, we want to know, is it going to be entertaining? Are you going to be entertained? Are we going to enjoy the game? If it's $60 million or if it's $300 million, the game gives us a good experience. The budget doesn't matter to us, does it? But if the developers can make the same quality of game and it's going to cost them $60 million, why spend the extra $200 million? Just shows the industry is inflated right now with these prices. Corey saying your full platinum run was 84 hours. You played on lethal. I remember you saying that. Yeah, it would have been less if he played on normal. Yeah, maybe I'll go to lethal on a second playthrough. What I like about Ghost of Yotei is it feels contained. We're playing on this map, and everything feels contained. Everything feels, I can get there. I can complete that task, and I can then move on to my next task. Things just don't feel inflated in the game. I think one of the this kind of inflated budgets and games costing hundreds of millions. I think we need to ask why. Why do games cost hundreds of millions of dollars? Developers don't go out there and talk about a project and say, yes, this is going to cost $500 million. Nope. No. That's not what they do. Think back to the PlayStation 3 era, right? AAA studios typically would have 100 to 150 people working on it. But nowadays, it's not unusual to see kind of well over 1,000 developers working on a single game across multiple studios in different countries. Payroll, project management, motion capture, acting, musical, communication tools, testers, contractors, all that adds up, and it's massive. It just inflates the cost. Every new console generation means rebuilding or upgrading your engine, redoing your artwork, your pipeline, raising the bar visually, right? Getting everything done in 4K, ray tracing, performance capture, and all that stuff isn't cheap. So all these costs do add up, especially when you're kind of hitting AAA games. And then you got marketing for many like major games. The marketing budgets are ridiculous. You know, if a game costs 200 million to make, your marketing spend is probably 15, 20, 30 million dollars, maybe more. You know, you're going to end up with these massive high risk projects where just one underperforming game and it could take down your entire studio, right? So we've seen it happen before. Talented team making great games, they don't sell quite as well, and all of a sudden the studio's been canned because the game hasn't done well. It's cost hundreds of millions to make. You know, Concord, for whether you like it or not, it cost hundreds of millions to make. The game didn't resonate. Studio got canned. How much money did they waste on that project? That's just one. And you have to ask, right, is that way of developing, is it sustainable? Is it sustainable? We're at a point where games, have they reached their limit? They cannot get bigger without collapsing on their own weight, right? Because what Ghost of Yotei does, it challenges that notion. You know, it proves that you can make something beautiful and modern and it's profitable without inflating to blockbuster scale. It's not their first rodeo, is it? They've done it before. They've done it with Ghost of Tsushima. It costs a similar amount to make, but they delivered once again. So my question to you guys is, if a game looks great and it feels great, it runs well, does it matter if it costs 60 million or 600 million? Does it matter? Another aspect to consider, guys, is can smaller games compete with these big behemoths? Right. On one hand, you've got your GTAs, right? When GTA 5 came out, it had a giant budget. It sold tens of millions. It's still in the top 10 ranking in many of the countries around the world. It dominates the headlines and it sets a cultural tone. But on the other hand, you look back over the last couple of years, we've had Helldivers 2, we're talking about it in the chat, we've had Baldur's Gate 3, Ghost of Yotei, Hi-Fi Rush, Expedition 33, we've had Astrobot. All these games have been made with modest budgets, right, at a fraction of the cost of the mega budgets. And those games have been just as successful as some of the big hitting AAA games over the last 2 to 3 years, if not more. So do games really need to cost hundreds of millions of dollars? That's the question. GLP Gaming saying SM2 had a budget of around 300 million. It was a pretty boring game. Whereas Yotei is 70-ish and is better. Yeah, it's I think there is a here's one of my things. When I play a game that's 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours, right? And it respects my time because the game is contained and it delivers what I want. That's more appealing to me than a 100-hour game that feels padded. You get what I mean? All right, smaller teams, we've seen this before, smaller teams, because their budgets are relatively smaller, they can take more risks. They can be a bit more weird, a bit more creative. We saw this a lot in the PS1, PS2 era, and a little bit in the PS3 era. Games were different, and it's what drew me towards PlayStation in the first place. Loads of Japanese games coming out in the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 era. They were freaky as hell. They're weird, but they were brilliant. They were fun. They were enjoyable. Great experiences, really memorable games. And we just don't seem to get those types of games unless you're looking at the indie scene, really, right? I think we're still going to have these big games. They're still going to exist, of course, right? We're still going to have cinematic blockbuster games. They're not going away, and there's nothing wrong with that because we love those spectacular cinematic experiences. They're not going anywhere. Your Red Dead Redemptions, your GTA 6s, your Cyberpunks, The Witch, those kind of big games. They're never going to go away. They're always going to be there. They're going to be the centerpiece of everything, right? Those are kind of once in a console cycle type games. Or if you're talking about GTA's 3 console cycles for GTA 5, right? PS3, PS4, PS5. But what I think the industry needs to do, and the gamers' expectations maybe, right? Not every game has to be that size of game. And I've seen this with Ghost of Yotei. Some people are saying, if you look at there's certain areas, I have seen it myself. If you see some areas in Ghost of Yotei, you can tell the assets are being reused from Ghost of Tsushima. You can see there's a level of, I don't want to say polish, but there's a level of visual quality. You can tell that this isn't PS5 Pro quality in certain areas. But I'm not knocking the game. The game is phenomenal. It's a brilliant game. You're always going to have this. There's always going to be some give and take with games. And expectations have to be managed accordingly to those games. GTA 6 comes out. People are going to be inspecting that game with a magnifying glass because they expect absolute flawless quality. And to be honest, Rockstar typically delivers flawless quality with new games, not remasters. So people are going to put that game under a microscope expecting it to be absolutely flawless. With Ghost of Yotei, the game's a $70 million game. And you expect it to be very good, and it is. It delivers on that. But of course, there's going to be some areas where I think the close-up of some of the NPCs don't look great. But I'm just nitpicking. We can nitpick. But still, every game doesn't have to be a $300 million budget game. We can afford to have smaller games with smaller budgets. So Sax Maxi saying smaller games can compete. Look at Silksong, Expedition 33. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Tox, you're saying, what is the current GTA 6 budget? My God. You know what? It wouldn't surprise me if it's over $1 billion in development. You know, the game's been in development for years, multiple countries it's been developed in, thousands of developers. But you know what? As soon as that game goes on sale, day one, they'll make it back in day one. 24 hours, they'll be in profit. And then it's profit all the way. I don't think there's any issues of... Rockstar have probably just gone to Take-Two and said, look, we're going to make a game. We don't care what it costs. We're just going to make it. And that's absolutely fine. And they've got so much credit in the bank with what they did with Red Dead Redemption 2. I don't think people are going to complain. So, and they'll make that back easily. I mean, they make so much money on GTA Online. They're literally printing money right now. I'm kind of briefly mentioned it, that one of the things about the smaller games is because they are smaller in budget, smaller in cost to make, they can take risks. They can be a bit more, they can try something, right? They can be different. But the bigger games, they cost too much. So they cannot take a risk. They can't be creative in a different way. What they end up doing, those big games, they tend to chase trends, right? They start packing games with content just to make you play it so it lasts a little bit longer. Can they get a microtransaction from you? Can they get you to spend a little bit more cash in the game? Right? Things start getting locked behind paywalls and microtransactions. When you spend $300, $400, $500 million on a game, you cannot afford it to fail. You've got to make more money. So you can't afford to experiment and be creative, which is a real frustration about some of the really big games. You kind of get the same, I don't want to say the same slop every year, but you do, right? With many games that come out every year, it's pretty much the same formula. Very few changes to core gameplay mechanics. Very few changes to the visuals. We all know what kind of games these are that come out every year that spend $200-300 million. Maybe the question isn't about who spends the most money and produces the biggest game. Maybe it's more about who spends smarter. You know, do you want one big game that comes out every 5, 6, 7 years? Or would you take a smaller game every couple of years? You know, would you take an Astrobot size game, an Expedition 33 size game, a Mafia size game every 2 to 3 years or every 3 years? Or take a big AAA game like GTA 6 that comes out every 10 years. Some fair comparison because I'm using GTA 6, but you get what I mean, right? I think development is in a very interesting space right now. Really interesting space. We're heading into a bit of a split, right? We're still going to see these big games. We're still going to see GTAs, Red Dead Redemptions, Call of Duties, Battlefield 6s. We're going to get those big cinematic AAA style games, but we're also going to see what I call the rise of the mid-tier, middle level games, smart mid-tier games. So these are games that are going to cost between $40 and $80 million, right? They're going to look like AAA games. They're going to feel and play like AAA games, but they've been built differently, not with AAA teams. And they're going to use things like AI-assisted animation, procedural environmental design, faster engines like Unreal Engine 5, even though it does have some technical teething issues. All this will reduce the cost of development. But you still need human creativity, right? You can't just go ahead and deploy AI like some companies are doing across all their teams. It's just not going to be possible. You need that human creativity. Otherwise, all games start to look generic. And here's the thing. I don't think... There was a time, right, when free-to-play games and live service and multiplayer games was like the in thing. Everybody wanted to play them. Yeah, they were free. Go ahead, get stuck in. But the thing is, right, every game like that feels like a grind. And I think people want memorable experiences. You know, they want an emotional journey. They want a tight single player game. Why I enjoy single player games so much is because I know when I put in Ghost of Yotei, Ghost of Tsushima, when I play the Mafia, when I play the single player campaign games, I know that in 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours, I'm done. The game is finished, right? If we're sticking to the story, I can move on. Or I can replay it, pick different modes, have a different playthrough, but I know I'm going to be done in 20, 30 or 40 hours. Essentially, the game is finished, right? I can start another single player experience, another game, another world to get lost in. I get closure between each single player game. I don't get closure from live service multiplayer games. I don't get that. I don't get the closure. They go on forever. So that's what I think Ghost of Yotei nails for me so far during my playthrough. I haven't completed it, of course, but I'm still playing through it. It delivers a full experience, start to finish, even though I'm partway through. It doesn't waste your time. It doesn't drown you in excess. I think that's an important lesson the industry and devs need to learn. Bigger isn't always better. Less sometimes is more. So Toxie saying, seems like small budget and small developer teams are producing better games. It does feel like that. It does feel like that. And GLP Gamer, you're saying PS needs their tentpole title with some AA games to fit in between. Yeah, that's what's been missing, hasn't it? You know, the Sony first party traditional AAA games, we know they're going to be 5 to 7 years, right? We know that. But the smaller games are missing this time round. It feels like that anyway. PlayStation needs to remake their whole PS3 catalog. Yeah, I can't stand the streaming from when I used to stream from the PlayStation Plus premium tier, which I've got rid of now. A mix with single A, double A, and triple A Petrov. GTA 6 is going to break the internet. If you've seen that movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still, that is what's going to happen when GTA 6 comes out. It is literally going to be. I don't know if you guys remember when COVID kicked in. I saw clips on the news where they were showing you like streets and cities were empty, right? Everybody was told to stay indoors, and you had like animals kind of walking onto the roads and things. This is a scene from I Am Legend, right? When GTA 6 comes out, it's going to be like that. The roads will be empty. Everybody's going to be indoors. No one's going to be on the streets for at least a couple of weeks. At least. It's going to be one of them kind of games. Toxie saying Silent Hill F is probably the best Unreal Engine 5 implementation to date. I'm going to have to check it out. It is on my list of games to get. I've just got 4 more of the Yotei 6 to get first. Tox, you love it when the game respects your time. Yeah, I love it. I love it when you've got that tight experience in a game. And of course, you have replayability with the change of modes, difficulty and stuff like that. New Game Plus and everything, right? I want to know the game's done and I can move on. I get closure then. I don't like the idea of having to play a game for what feels like forever. And GLP Gamer, you're saying, for me, the platinum is the finish of the game. I feel like I've completed everything the game has to offer. Yeah, I had a chat with a few of the guys regarding platinum trophies. I wish I had the time for it. I just don't have the time for it. But you know what? I appreciate and respect those that go out and get trophies. It's a difficult thing to do. Corey saying no smaller games. People don't buy enough of the AA games that exist now. PS adding more AA games isn't going to help anything. It's just going to be more AA games that people won't buy. Yeah, I mean, what the Order 1886, very short game, right? Is that a AAA game? Is Astrobot a AAA game? I don't know. They feel like smaller experiences. I don't know. I think if PlayStation, it's not going to happen, but if they went back and redid some remakes for some of the Resistance games, Infamous, Killzone, not remade right from the ground up, but even if they were remastered, you know, a kind of a 2-year project, I'd drop that into the AA category if it was made for PlayStation 5. So let's have a look then. So yeah, so that was my take on it really with regarding big budgets. It shows Ghost of Yotei shows the way for me. You can make a beautiful game with a manageable budget, right? It doesn't rely on hundreds of millions of dollars. If studios are paying attention, we could see healthy balance, more creativity, and a variety of ways of making the game without having to risk the studio going bust. And I think Sucker Punch nailed it. They didn't go out and reinvent the wheel for Ghost of Yotei. They reused whatever assets they could. They built on an amazing experience and the foundations of Ghost of Tsushima. And they improved, and we had this briefly earlier on today, we had this discussion. I think they improved Ghost of Tsushima in every technical way with Ghost of Yotei. And now they're reaping the rewards. I can't wait to see how they... I'm hoping they release a DLC for Yotei that hasn't been confirmed yet. So fingers crossed that's going to happen. But I'm looking forward to see how Legends plays out. I can't wait for that mode in early 2026. And then, of course, we look forward to Sucker Punch's next project, which hopefully is either a new IP or they go back to Ghost of Tsushima. Toxie saying gamers are staying away from Ubisoft's open world games. Yeah, the last one was good. Shadows, AC Shadows was good. Toxie saying Pro makes Yotei shine. Yotei shine. It certainly does. Looks absolutely stunning on the Pro. So that's my take on this discussion about big games. I think there's a fair argument here to say that, look, there should be games that are built using that whatever structure, whatever formula that Sucker Punch used to deliver Ghost of Yotei on a reported $60-70 million budget. That formula works. We don't have to spend hundreds and hundreds of millions unless the intention is to make a game that has other things. Like, you know, if you're talking 300 million, you're talking like Call of Duty, Battlefield territory. We know those games have big multiplayer attached to those games, right? We know there's more seasons and maps and things. So unless you're going for that, there's no reason to spend that kind of cash. I'm just looking at my gameplay from Ghost of Yotei. Such a good game. It's so fluid. The combat is so good. So Corey's saying Astrobot sold like 3 million copies. The Order 1886 sold significantly less than that. People buy AAA games for franchises that they know. It sucks, but people don't buy AA games. Yeah, that is true. People do buy. People go into if you put out if Sony puts out a God of War game, people are going to buy it. Right? It's God of War. You put out a Spider-Man game, people will buy it. It's Spider-Man. Maybe it takes time for people to become familiar with the character. So let's say Sony releases a God of War AA game, people will buy it because it's God of War, it's Kratos. Yeah, and it's part of the franchise. Maybe with the handheld coming out, maybe there's more opportunities for smaller, Silk Song-esque, Hollow Knight style games, Astrobot style games. Those games and the rumored Metroidvania God of War game, those kind of games will be fantastic on a handheld device. Maybe there's an opportunity there to make smaller games, release on the PlayStation 6 and the handheld, whilst we wait for big hitting AAA games. Just a thought, really. So Sax Max, you're saying, how does AC Shadows compare to Ghost of Yotei? Well, Shadows is good. It's a good game. I do like it, but it's for me, just personal opinion, great game. I enjoyed Shadows. It suffers from the same problem that many open world games suffers from. It suffers from the same problems that Ubisoft game suffers from. A lot of the things just felt like just do whatever you want in an open world. Just go anywhere you want, discover what you want. 10, 15 years ago, that kind of game would be amazing. An open world, a map where you've got no restrictions, go anywhere you want. But these days, it doesn't feel unique and new. I like the fact that in Tsushima, you can only go so far. You're kind of guided in certain ways. You can discover lots of side quests. You can take on certain challenges in a particular style, but there is a structure to the game. I felt that was missing from Shadows, and I'm not having a knock at Shadows. Shadows was a good game. It's big though, it's probably too big. It gets repetitive. Yeah, Toxia, repetition. It gets repetitive after a while. It suffers from the same thing that all Ubisoft games suffer from. They could just do with being 30 hours shorter, less side quests, less content. But I know those those completionists want more content. So it's one of them. It's a good game. If you haven't played it, I would highly recommend it. Maybe wait for a sale or something, or a Black Friday discount, Christmas sale. I'm sure it'll be on offer. Assassin's Creed Petrov, you like Assassin's Creed Valhalla? It's an interesting game, Valhalla. I haven't played all of it. I do want to go back to it at some point. Tox, you're saying Yotei is open world, but it's tailored almost in a linear way. Yeah, I think that, there's a formula behind how you have to proceed in the game. I think the open world helps because you get the side quests. You've got this like progression and things like that you can do. There's a lot of discovery you can find, but the main missions, the main story, I think part of that is still locked. Only the bits that I've done so far behind a linear structure, which works really well, and I like that. So let's take a look at the third topic then. I found this really interesting. And there's some advertising that keeps popping up on these on these pages, so hopefully it doesn't come up on here. It's just about Sony versus Tencent, and it's a lawsuit. Sony claimed that Tencent's game, if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend you Google it. Tencent's game Light of Mortirum is a direct copy of Horizon. That's what Sony is saying. It's a copy of the game. So we'll have a look at the article. Then I'm going to play devil's advocate because I'm going to look at this from Sony's perspective and from Tencent's perspective. So let's... I don't know how much of that you can see. This is kind of in the way, isn't it? So this is from Eurogamer. And it says here, Sony has fired back against Tencent as part of a continuing lawsuit over its Horizon knockoff Light of Mortirum, claiming the Chinese conglomerate's defense is nonsense. Last November, Tencent revealed Light of Mortirum, which was immediately compared to Sony's Horizon games. As a result, the PlayStation maker has sued Tencent for allegedly ripping off its popular games. Tencent then retaliated by stating Sony's claims of originality were startling. Now, Sony is fighting back in a new court filing thanks to the Game Post. Sony has accused Tencent of playing a shell game with its subsidiaries to shield itself from liability. Tencent remarkably contends SIE's claims are unripe because, despite having announced and continuously promoted its games for months, Tencent purportedly delayed Light of Mortirum's release until 2027 after Sony Interactive Entertainment sued. Sony said in its complaint, "This is nonsense, the damage is done," and it continues. Although the public expressed confusion and outrage upon discovering Light of Mortirum for the knockoff that it is, Tencent remained undeterred. Tencent continued promoting its infringing game over SIE's objection, and Tencent refused to accept any responsibility over its conduct. Tencent quietly updated the Steam page for Light of Mortirum, removing a number of screenshots and a cover image of its Aloy-like protagonist. However, as Sony has claimed, the damage is done. In its defense, Tencent claimed Sony was attempting to sue the wrong company. Sony's lawsuit is against Tencent America, Proxima Beta US, and Tencent Holdings, but Tencent itself said the game is being developed and published by Polaris Quest and Aurora Studios, a developer operating under Tencent Technology in Shanghai, and Proxima Beta Pte Limited, a company in Singapore doing business as Tencent Games and or Level Infinite. After SIE was forced to sue, Tencent attempted to avoid liability by playing a shell game with its brands and entities. Sony has said now Tencent tried to shield defendants that it owns and or controls from service of process, and now seeks to escape jurisdiction over the parent entity Tencent Holdings. It continued, Tencent Holdings describes its own business as having a games division that owns Aurora Studios, the Light of Mortirum development studio. Tencent Holdings reports all of its revenues and debut from games on its annual report without attribution to any subsidiary, and it uses the name Tencent to advertise its games, like Light of Mortirum, without distinguishing between subsidiaries. Sony has claimed reactions from the public and media highlight the resemblance between the game and will jeopardize the success of Horizon series. So you get the idea. There's arguments for and against. There's arguments from Sony saying that the game is a ripoff. There's an argument from Tencent saying actually the game's not a ripoff, and Sony's suing the wrong company. So what the hell's going on? Let me just pop the fan on, guys. It's getting hot in here. So GLP Gaming is saying it's a copy and paste, to be honest. Toxie saying Tencent is just flexing. They don't care with Sony things, and they don't care how much money they have to waste in court battles. See, when I saw this 2024, right? I can't remember exactly when it was, but when I saw the very first images of the game, my first reaction was, great, we've got another DLC for Horizon Forbidden West. That was my first reaction. Then I saw the main character, and it wasn't Aloy. It looked like her, but it wasn't Aloy. Then I realized it was actually from Tencent. So maybe Sony had done a partnership deal with Tencent. And then as I read more into the articles last year, it was clearly, on the surface of it, it's a ripoff. It's a blatant ripoff. But there's more to it. So the question is, right, when does inspiration become copying? Where do you draw the line? Right? And that's what Tencent are trying to argue. So just like for context, right? Horizon Zero Dawn, we know it came out 2017-ish, right? It introduced the game's main character, Aloy. It also shows us a post-apocalyptic world where humans live in tribes and robotic wildlife roam the land. The sequel, Horizon Forbidden West, expands on that world. The games are beloved for their aesthetic blend of tribal and futuristic machine fauna and open world exploration. And over time, Horizon has now become one of Sony's flagship IPs. And they're making a TV show, right? A movie, I think, or both. Now, Light of Mortirum, announced by Tencent via its subsidiaries Polaris Quest and Aurora Studios in 2024. And the reveal showed a red-haired or very similarly styled female protagonist. And it shows mechanical creatures, an open world, tribal futuristic mix of techs and ruins. And immediately after that bit of gameplay or that trailer was shown or that marketing was released, immediately afterwards, fans, the press, communities compared it to Horizon straight away. That was my reaction. But the game hasn't been released. Apparently, it's been pushed back to 2027. So during the lawsuit, Tencent, we know, updated their Steam page. They removed the Horizon-style screenshots and they swapped the cover art so it's less Aloy lookalike. I mean, doesn't that give you the impression that they're guilty? All of a sudden, in the middle of a lawsuit, you've gone and changed all your assets or your marketing assets. But Sony's claiming that the damage is already done. Now, Tencent defends that their game, Light of Mortirum, it's a distinct project developed under different subsidiaries, and that Sony has also sued the wrong entity. So they've got a couple of fightbacks on Sony. But by now, the media and us, the gamers, the people, we've formed impressions, and many are calling it a Horizon ripoff, which, you know, it doesn't take a genius to work out that both games look very similar, right? We know studios take ideas from each other, and they work on it, they expand it, they put their own take on it, and they move it on. They kind of develop on the code, or develop on the idea rather. But this is Tencent literally like stealing the code and calling it Light of Mortirum. That's what it looks like. Petrov is saying, I agree, copy and paste. I hope the judge takes Sony's side. Tox is saying, Tencent thinks just because they have an uncalculated wealth, they can brute force their way into anything. And so, it's a Horizon movie. So it's a valuable IP from Sony's perspective. And they're saying Light of Mortirum doesn't just borrow general genre tropes, right? What they're saying is it copies protected audio and visual expression. So Sony is saying imagery, character design, the environments, mechanical creatures design, the color schemes, the fonts, the marketing assets. Sony states Tencent's promotional art, screenshots, cover images, they look like Aloy and other elements that create confusion. And the claim is that those are original creative choices. They're not generic tropes and thus eligible for copyright protection. Yeah, exactly. Tox, yeah, same color palette. Exactly the same color palette. It's ridiculous and it creates confusion. Many journalists and fans have said it's obviously a Horizon ripoff or knockoff. And they argue that Light of Mortirum can siphon away goodwill associated with Horizon, especially amongst like casual or uninformed consumers. They also argue that Aloy is a brand identifier. So Tencent using a visually protagonist, someone that looks like Aloy is going off Sony's goodwill. And the other thing Sony argues that is Light of Mortirum is being marketed as a Tencent game or under the Tencent name. So it's not always distinguished from its subsidiaries. Sony claims Tencent is leveraging the parent brand for marketing, makes it harder to disclaim separation. And then Tencent argues that Sony is suing the wrong entities. It's crazy. It's like Tencent are playing this court battle game. And I, a company of this size is blatantly ripping off Sony. That's what it feels like. Now, what's interesting is that Sony says, even before Light of Mortarum is released, the damage is already done. People have already seen the trailers, the screenshots. Reputational harm and consumer confusion has already occurred. Sony requests, this is Sony's request, the court denies Tencent's motion to dismiss. They're seeking injunctive relief and statutory or actual damages. And Sony highlights that many media outlets and journalists have identified the resemblance between the game from Tencent and Sony's Horizon game. Public perception, they're also saying the same thing. And the fact that Tencent altered content, marketing material during the lawsuit, it shows that there is an admission or an awareness that they're in the wrong. You see how it's all starting to stack up, right? From Sony's perspective, right? It looks like it's a solid case. But Tencent is fighting back remarkably. Yeah, Toxie saying Aloy, Peach, fuzzy, copy and paste. Yeah, it really is. Tencent knows exactly what they're doing. Absolutely. Yes, Saxmax. So Tencent is fighting back. So Sony is saying it's a rip-off. They copied our assets, fonts, colors, color palette, design, the world, the environment, the lead character. Everything's copied. Everything. Tencent's fighting back. They're saying this. Tencent's argument is Sony is pointing to something that's generic. Like, for example, Sony has a post-apocalyptic world, robotic creatures, tribal societies, and kind of reusing ancient technology, a female, and exploration, right? Tencent are saying Sony are trying to monopolize those things. Post-apocalyptic worlds, robotic creatures, tribal societies, ancient tech, a lone female warrior, and exploration. Tencent is saying that is what Sony is trying to protect. That's ridiculous. I mean, I can see that kind of makes sense from Tencent's perspective, but it doesn't mean Tencent can have a game with a lone survivor in a futuristic world with mechanical machinery, with, you know, a kind of a post-apocalyptic world with robotic creatures, tribal societies. You put all that together, it's a ripoff. If they created a futuristic game with different characters, that's fine. Sony's not saying that's what we're protecting. Sony's saying you've copied every element of our game. So I can see why Tencent are pushing back, but it's wrong. It's completely wrong. And then Tencent are also saying that Sony's suing the wrong company. Their argument is the lawsuit names Tencent America, Proxima Beta, and Tencent Holdings are wrong because the companies that actually developed the game are subsidiaries based in Singapore and China. So it's not straight. This isn't as cut and dry as a lot of people think. Honestly, it really isn't. Because just because we look at these images and we're saying they look the same, it's a ripoff or it's a copy, the legal test has to be more definitive. It has to be more demanding, right? So the legal test will require side-by-side dissection of protectable elements, and they'll filter out unprotectable ideas, and they have to show the similarities in strong protectable parts. So courts may refuse to see similarities in game systems such as robotic animals or tribal societies. The courts might think that is not copyright protectable. And there's a couple of examples. I made a note of this. So this is, I made a note about this. This is Capcom versus a company called Data East. This is in 1994, right? Capcom claimed Data East, who were the developers for fighter games, Capcom claimed Data East's history infringed Street Fighter 2. The court found that although there were similarities, many were non-protectable. So you could not protect moves or pacing in the game. So infringement was not established. And there's another one here. We've got another one. It's a pattern. Data East again versus a company called Epyx, and it's spelled EPYX. This is in 1988. So Epyx made Temple of Apshai, I think, or Jumpman, Summer Game Series, and Mission Impossible. And there was a claim over a karate game mechanics, which was thrown out by the courts. It was rejected. The court declined that copyright could protect general fighting mechanics. I mean, how bad would that be that you'd have fighting game mechanics which were protected or copyrighted? We wouldn't have some of the games like Street Fighter, Tekken, Dead or Alive, Double Dragon from the 90s. We wouldn't have had any of those games if fighting games had copyrighted protected materials, or those studios would have had to pay hefty royalties to whichever company got that protected and copyrighted. So even though mechanics are the same or look the same, even to the point where they're almost identical, it doesn't mean the court's going to say it's a copy. Another big one, and if you remember a game called Asteroids, right? This is Atari versus Amusement World, 1981, right? There was a game called Meteors, right? It was believed Meteors did not infringe Asteroids, despite the games being almost identical. You have a rocket and you shoot rocks in space. One was called Asteroids, one was called Meteors. Big lesson here is that similar ideas are not enough to claim copyright, and they look the same, very similar color palettes. There's another example, MicroStar versus Form Gen 1998. That involved unauthorized user levels in Duke Nukem 3D. It shows that derivatives work liability in gaming, but again, no action was proven, or there was no company was found guilty. What this suggests is that the courts are demanding clear proof, especially in creative fields with heavy genre borrowing. So it's not going to be easy for Sony to prove in a court of law unless Sony has unequivocal evidence when Light of Mortarum is finally released. Dodgers are in the World Series. So there are broader issues here as well, because if Sony wins a broad ruling that their ideas could be protected, then it impacts smaller developers, right? There might be a worry to explore certain genres or certain aesthetics in a game because of an impending lawsuit. So exploring a genre similar to a genre that's been already established by a big developer might be something a small studio may want to stay away from if, Sony wins the case. So it could reduce innovation and push everyone into a more safe and samey type direction. So the line between inspired and copied is very, very blurry right now, right? It's a tough case. It's not going to be easy, right? But this case with Sony and Tencent, it involves Chinese and international subsidiaries, global marketing, Steam storefronts, and how US court battles deal with jurisdiction and enforcement could set a benchmark for future global gaming disputes. Something else which comes to mind here is it's not exactly discussed in the lawsuit, but one wild card is whether Light of Mortarum used AI tools, then trained those AI tools on Horizon images, including Horizon assets, to generate concept art and visuals, hence the striking resemblance. So if so, Sony might argue those tools gave them derivative art. That opens another legal frontier. What if marketing renders or concept art are also AI influenced? Then what? Is that a case for a lawsuit? It's incredible, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. So the challenge is, if Light of Mortarum is independently coded and none of Horizon's assets or codes are reused, is Sony still justified in suing Tencent based on aesthetics and marketing? That's the challenge. That is the challenge. The thing is, the burden of proof, the burden of proof is on Sony to show substantial similarity in protected expression. Can they do that? I don't know. That is down to the courts. So I think this is going to be, I think Sony they'll win in some way. I think there'll be a certain amount of detail that Tencent will end up changing in the game. So there is that distinction between the look of Light of Mortarum and the look of Horizon. I don't think Sony will be able to protect future robots, tech, a post-apocalyptic world, that type of stuff. I think if Tencent end up changing the color palette, essentially, they'll get away with it. That's my personal opinion. That's what I think will happen. But yeah, let me know what you think, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think. I think what we'll do is we'll take a look at the some of the channel polls. Might be a good time to take a look at that. Raz, you think it's an open and shut case? But it'll drag in the courts because of semantics. Sony will put it out in the end. Hope so. I hope so. I mean, I think sometimes when you can see something that's as blatant as these two games, and one is clearly a copy, you'd like to think it's an open and shut case, but it doesn't always work like that. It's just when things get dragged into the courts, all the crap comes out, doesn't it? All the dirty laundry comes out in the courts. Yeah, Tox, you want Sony to win it? Yeah, I hope they win it. Hope it's open and shut. Sax Max, you're saying, from your understanding, Nintendo's trying to patent game mechanics so other companies can't use them. This is probably motivated by Pal World, a game similar to Pokemon. Yeah, I heard that. A few months ago that story came out from Nintendo. Thing is, there is a difference between protecting an idea and actual game mechanics. You know, if something is uniquely belonging to the game, like I can't remember the name of the game now. I saw it recently, but there's a game coming out. Name escapes me. It literally copies Spider-Man, the swinging mechanics. You know, that the mechanics of Spider-Man swinging in the air, that is a unique movement to Spider-Man. That is a protected asset. But swinging in a game is not a protected asset. But the way the character moves, if you copy that, then of course that's infringing. Those kind of things I think are acceptable, but it's a dangerous ground when you start protecting certain assets, certain play styles. You know, you can't protect every play style in a game. It's just not possible. GLP Gamer, you're saying Tencent hasn't got a leg to stand on. They've literally copied every design from Horizon Forbidden West. Oh, it's hilarious. If you look at the side by side comparison, it's quite. I'd like to say it's an open and shut case. So, yes, that's it. That's the game. Ananta. Yeah, Ananta. That's got elements of swinging Spider-Man mechanics. And surely those mechanics of swinging like Spider-Man, I don't know if they're protected. I would imagine Sony protects that type of stuff, or Marvel protects that type of stuff. But yeah, I would have thought that's a copyrightable or infringing claim from either Sony or Marvel, unless Antenna have the rights. Anyway, so those that follow the channel will know that I do regular polls on the channel. I thought it'd be a good idea just to have a quick look back over the last few days worth of the polls, see what people's opinions are. I only want to have a look at kind of 7 days worth of polls, and we'll do it on a week by week basis. We'll just go back the previous 7 days to see what people have been talking about. Always makes interesting reading. So, The Last of Us Part 1. Easy place to start, isn't it? And The Last of Us Part 2. Pick one. Right? And I've left it at that. Just pick one. And we've had 692 votes. And we've had an overwhelming majority. 71% have voted The Last of Us Part 1. 29% have voted The Last of Us Part 2. There's obviously going to be a lot of gameplay wise. The Last of Us Part 2 is far superior, in my opinion. Right, in my opinion, The Last of Us Part 2 is one of the greatest games ever made. But of course, it comes with a lot of baggage, right? It has a lot of controversy. But for you guys, The Last of Us Part 1 or The Last of Us Part 2, I'm going to get a drink of water. Take your pick. Part 1 or Part 2? Both. Okay. Two great games, honestly. Great games. But GRP Gamer, you're saying both. Last of Us 2 got a bit silly towards the end. Yeah. I just love both of these games. I do like I like the brutality of Part 2. I just thought it was brilliant. Of course, you know, nobody wanted Joel to die, but that's is what it is. But we had a 70-30% difference there. So what are people saying about the game? I don't know if you can read that properly. Can we get that bigger? So I love Part 2 because it exposes our daily lives, how much ignorance, but also how many open-minded people that enjoy a great story, well written, regardless of the roles, gender, or sexuality of the main character. I knew stuff like this was going to pop up. Corey, Part 1 is probably the most misinterpreted game in the history of gaming. And I think it leads to a lack of understanding of Part 2. Personally, I think Part 2 is an absolute technical and narrative masterclass. But I think that is only possible because Part 1 is the best setup in the history of gaming. Prince Philip, gameplay, The Last of Us Part 2 is better than story in The Last of Us Part 1. So you think gameplay, The Last of Us Part 2, story, The Last of Us Part 1. Part 2 is an abomination. We know we're going to get those kind of comments. So you went back on the Last of Us Part 2 when you got when you first got the Pro. I made a decision in 2019, the end of, it was coming up to 2019, it was October or November. I decided that any games that come out beyond Christmas 2019, I'm only going to play on the Pro. So in 2020, when The Last of Us Part 2 came out and Ghost of Tsushima came out. I got both games day one. I never played them. I played them when I got the PlayStation 5 Pro. The PlayStation 5, not the Pro. When I got the PlayStation 5. Absolute brilliant. Because before that, I had the PlayStation 4. And I never upgraded to the Pro. So I wanted to get the best experience for both of those games, but on the PS5. So I played those games towards the end of 2020. And I already heard, all the reports and the leaks about what happened in The Last of Us Part 2, but didn't stop me from playing it. And man, what a game. What a game. Sax Max is saying Part 1, absolutely loved the story, while the gameplay of Part 2 was better. I did not like the story. I think most of us prefer Part 1 story, Part 2 gameplay. Yeah, it's a nice combination. Look forward to Part 3 now. So, what else have we got on here? Right, pick one. Red Dead Redemption 2 or GTA 5. And we have an overwhelming, almost an 80-20 split here. 986 votes. Red Dead Redemption 2. Clear winner. Massive margin too. So we're saying here, ritualizing. One carries the better story, the other better online. And if we're talking story, Red Dead has no competition in that. That's a fair point. Actually, I like that. Let's give him a thumbs up and a bit of a heart. Excellent story. I can still feel Arthur Morgan's pain. Yes. Red Dead Redemption 2. Oh, Raz, we'll have a comment there. Both are iconic games, but it's Red Dead for me all the way. I love both. I will not choose. Love it. This is what I mean. I don't have time to respond to everyone's comments, but I do read everybody's comments. Raz, you're saying Red Dead. Tox, I also got those two games day one back in 2019. Yeah, crystal clear. Yeah, yeah, brilliant. And the first game I played on the PlayStation 5, the first game was Ghost of Tsushima. That's the first game I played. Used the Pulse headset, plugged it in, never looked back since. What a game. And that game would never have been as good on the PlayStation 4. Story-wise, of course, gameplay-wise, it would have been great, but performance-wise, technical, the smoothness of running that game on the PS5, you can see it straight away. Base PS4 or base PS5. What an experience that was. So here you go. Error 060194. This shows my belief that GTA 6 is not going to be as big as most are saying it will be. I didn't much care for GTA 5. That's not going to be the case. GTA 6 is going to be a monumental occasion. It's going to be phenomenal. Red Dead Redemption pisses on GTA. The end. I like that. I'm going to give Sean East 76 a like and a thumbs up and a heart. The One Who Laughs 101. Red Dead Redemption 2 ain't just Rockstar's greatest game. It's the greatest game ever made, in my opinion. I concur. So that's GTA and Red Dead. Okay. Difficult one. Pick one. And this, I mean, the results are almost identical. It's 55% God of War 2018. 45% God of War Ragnarok, 858 votes. It's pretty close. It's a pretty close choice. I'm curious as to why people have gone with God of War 2018 over God of War Ragnarok. Why would that be? So let's have a look what people are saying. Okay, well, ridiculous. Sweet Baby worked on Ragnarok. That's why it wasn't very good. So, Cody, you're saying both were amazing. First game takes it very slightly, but the Thor fight in Ragnarok was incredible. Nice comment. 2018 by Miles. Okay, fine. Not a problem. Man, this is hard. Yes, it is a tough choice. So, Rami Yohei, 7286. Ragnarok improved every aspect from the previous game, so I voted it. But with that said, I like the story more of God of War 2018. That's a nice comment. I like that. Tox, 100% facts. GLP Gamer 2018 by far. Tox 2018. GLP Gamer, you're saying the story was so much better in 2018. Ragnarok is so much better. I don't get the full glaze. So Iron Dragonar is saying God of War 2018. Personally, I didn't like the gameplay very much, but the story kept me hooked, so the game wasn't ever boring. Ragnarok was fun, but it got boring after 15 hours. For the last 20 hours, I just wanted the game to end, so I could move on to something else. Here's the thing for me. I wasn't expecting God of War 2018 to be like that game. You know, 2016, right? We got to see I think it was 2016, the EA trailer reveal for God of War. The very first time we saw it, and the crowds went nuts. The fans went crazy. It was the first time we saw God of War in a different way, right? They redid the game. And I think that impact, and when we got the game in 2018, and the story was good, don't get me wrong, the story was really good. But that playing God of War for the first time in that new way, I think that's what edges it for me. Ragnarok was just a continuation. It was good. Yep, I enjoyed it, had a lot of fun. But the very first time you play God of War 2018, it hits on a different level. I think that, for me, that's what makes that a little bit more the favourable game. Razi saying 2018 story for sure. Sax Maxi saying Ragnarok suffers from pacing issues. For example, I did not enjoy playing as Atreus. It was a bit slow at times. You know what I don't like playing, right? I don't like playing other characters in games. I just want to play as the main character and then complete the game with the main character. I don't like it when you have dual characters unless it's a GTA game. Everything else, I just want to play as the main character. I want to play as Arthur Morgan. I want to play as Spider-Man. I want to play as Ragnarok. I don't want to play as, the number 2, the sidekick. All right? I don't want to play as the sidekick. Do I need to mention Spider-Man 2? Right. What else have we got? We've already had this discussion. When should Sony release the PS6? 45% are saying 2028. 24% 2027. It's interesting reading. What are people saying about this? C-Mart. So I've already answered some of these. I've had my PS5 since 2020. I'll be getting a PS6 day one. This Stephen Nearly is saying, if I wasn't a pro owner, I'd feel like I'm ready for next gen. But having a pro feels like they could ride out this gen a couple of more years. Yeah, see, this is the thing about having the pro. You feel you're already one step closer to the PS6. Yeah, playing as Mary Jane. Yeah, yeah. You just want to play as the main character, right? You just want to play as the main character. It's the reason why you picked up the game. Prince Philip, you're saying 2028 should be the right time. Yeah, let's move on. We've done the PlayStation 6. What a cracking game. What an amazing game. Uncharted, 16 years old. Uncharted 2, that was, Among Thieves, right? Last week, it was 16 years old. What an amazing game that was. Man, if they could bring back the whole Uncharted games for PlayStation 6 with all the bells and whistles in a box set, I'd take that day one. PS6 price guess. Oh. Price guess, I think the PlayStation 6. I think the PlayStation 6 will be sold at around £600. assuming they're going to stick to the same around the world at $600, £600, it'll be cheaper than the PlayStation 5 Pro. And the reason why I say that is because I say that because this is a console that Sony wants mass adoption. They want people to buy this straight away. So even if they take a hit on profitability for the first year, they'll do it. They need to get 20 million in the first year. So if it releases 2027, by 2028, they've got to have 20 million people on it. And then 20 million every year. That's their plan, isn't it? By the time you hit 7 years, 140 million people, move on to the next console, give or take. So I think it will be around £600, $600. The Pro, whenever it comes out, I think that'll be very expensive, but that'll have all the bells and whistles for the PlayStation 7. So yeah, what do you reckon? What do you guys think? GLP Gamer, you're saying £600 to £700. Unless it also comes with, because we know it's going to be a digital console, right? You can attach your disc drive. You'll have that option. But will it come with like a 1 terabyte version, 2 terabyte version, or a 4 terabyte version? So I think the lower memory, the lower storage will be the £600, $600 version, but there'll be a couple of versions of the PlayStation 6 at launch. I would be shocked if they have a PS6 at launch with a drive built into the console, like with the PlayStation 5. I'll be shocked if that happens from day one. Tox, you're saying PS6 Pro $800. Yeah, possibly, maybe more, maybe even more than that. Maybe more. I mean, Xbox released the Rogue Ally X, right? What's that, $1,000? Handheld device, $1,000. So there's no way a launch console is going to cost that much, because people are just not going to buy it. So Sony need people to get into the ecosystem quickly. They need to shift units, and they're only going to do that if they price it accordingly. And they've already had their fingers burnt with the PlayStation 3 launch, right? Was that like £600? And it just put people off right away. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 or Part 2. 60% here thought that Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 was better. You need physical games to stay alive on the PlayStation 6. Yeah, we will have physical games. That's going to happen. That's not going away anywhere. Physical games will be there. They just won't have the drive built in. You'll have to use your PlayStation 5 Pro drive. Should be compatible. Or you'd have to buy a separate drive. So people who want to play using their physical discs will always have the option. It's far too soon for Sony to discount and not include people who have discs. There'll be outrage if the only way to move forward on the PS6 is digital. I think there'll be outrage. So I'll put this out there. What new game are Bluepoint Games working on? So there's quite a few articles going around about Bluepoint Games' next game. They were hiring for a third-person action melee developer, and their last game, which was cancelled, which was the God of War live service game, and Bluepoint Games was working on that game, which got cancelled earlier this year. Now they're hiring for a third-person action melee game developer. They also worked on Demon's Souls remake and the God of War trilogy. So what is their next game going to be? 754 people voted on this, and Nobody thinks it's going to be a 8% new Demon Souls game. Then it's pretty split. I've got to say, it's pretty split. 25% is a new God of War game, probably in partnership with Santa Monica Studios. A Bloodborne remake or a sequel, 37%. And an Infamous remake or reboot. What the hell are Demon Souls? Blue Point Games, what are they working on? What is their next project? It's fascinating to see what they're working on. Action Melee. It's interesting, that. What are people saying in the comments? We need Infamous back alive and remastered. It is so underrated and deserves to be recognized more. To Alex NG6HC. I love the idea of Blue Point Games being a studio that develops remakes and remasters. And there are plenty of PlayStation exclusives that deserve to be brought back to the public eye. Absolutely agreed. So Mike J, the student. I doubt it, but new Infamous would be a dream or a remake. I've already replied to that one. So Comfy Chroma. I don't think they're working on Bloodborne remaster sequel, but I voted for it because I want to believe. Yes, I also want to believe. So Toxie saying, rumor is it's a new IP. My optimistic side wants to believe in a Bloodborne remake. Yeah, I think a lot of us want to believe that. I really do hope it's... I kind of hope it's like a Bloodborne remastered. Like a remake maybe from the ground up like they did with Demon Souls. But with a view that they're working on a sequel. But I know a lot of people are going to want the... I forget his name now. Miyazaki, right? The head of From Software involved with the sequel. Maybe they are. Maybe they're working in collaboration. I just don't know. But it's such a good game not to have available for the PlayStation 5, 60 frames, redone assets, redone visuals. It feels like it's a missed opportunity. So what else have we got? Okay. And this will be the last poll. Over 1,000 votes on this one. Ghosts of Yotei or Ghosts of Tsushima. 56%. I mean, it's pretty split. Not too far apart. 56% have gone with Ghosts of Tsushima and 44% have gone with Ghosts of Yotei. Tsushima for story, Yotei for gameplay. Story goes to Tsushima, gameplay to Yotei. Both are awesome. Each one is great in their own way. You strongly believe Intergalactic from Naughty Dog is Bloodborne in space. I can't wait to see that game. I cannot wait to get more from whatever Naughty Dog are doing with their game. So look, those are the kind of main bits on the polls and comments. So I think that's going to do it for the podcast. Because I was going to briefly talk about Unscripted, but I'm going to save that for another podcast because I wanted to introduce Unscripted, right? It is exactly what it says. It's going to be a segment on the podcast, which is just completely unscripted. We just take a look at what's happening in gaming. We have a look at over the last few days, right? And the podcast is structured. We know the topics of discussion. We know what we're going to talk about. But Unscripted is, let's just have a quick look at what's happening on X. Let's have a look at what's happening in the gaming media, and we'll talk about it. And it's a segment that I'm introducing into the podcast because at some stage it'll break away and it'll produce a couple of live shows during the week. So maybe on like Tuesdays and Thursdays. and we'll do a couple of unscripted episodes. And essentially what that will be is not as long as a podcast, but it very kind of tight. Sometimes it doesn't have to be very long. It could be like 30 minutes, could be 40 minutes. But it's just going through the gaming news, live reactions, and we're just talking about stuff happening off the cuff. That's the idea long term. At the moment, I'm just going to keep it segmented in the podcast until we're ready to take it off and have its own show in 2026. So I just wanted to introduce it to the podcast for now. And then in the future, keep an eye on the channel. We'll do a couple of these sessions. I'll be on the same days during the week, in the evening, probably 7 o'clock, probably Tuesdays and Thursdays. But that's something in 2026 to look forward to. But yeah, it's different. It's not going to be, like I said, it's not based on a podcast. We just literally load up and go straight into the topics that are being talked about on the day. So it could be anything, right? So what are you guys saying? So Neil's been getting most of the combat influence from Bloodborne and Elden Ring. Yeah, I read something about that. I want to see the next day. Didn't know that. Was that Saros? Or was it Wolverine? I'm pretty sure Intergalactic said they were doing something early in 2026. Maybe another state of play. Early spring. Sax Max, you're saying Ghost of Tsushima for the story and character of Jin, though I have not finished Yota yet. Yeah, same here. Same here. Still halfway through. So, guys, that is going to be it for the podcast for today. I appreciate you guys tuning in to the podcast. We're at nearly 3 hours into the podcast. It's 2 hours and 50 odd minutes, which is pretty good. And so far, so good. PC hasn't crashed, which is fantastic. So, guys, that's going to be it for the podcast today. Do me a favor, on the way out, hit that like button, and I will catch you on the next episode of the podcast next Sunday. Until then, have a cracking week, and I'll probably catch up with you guys during one of the chats in the videos.
Shoutout.